Okay, here we are, and today I'm talking with Annie Johnson from our Dirty community. So, Annie, thank you for joining me today. Thank you for chatting with me. I was really excited to meet you in virtual person, I guess is what we're doing. um, and I have to say, I saw one of your Facebook posts last week after the batching boot camp that we did.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to read what caught my attention. And then we kind of had a little conversation in Facebook. And then I was like, hey, come on the podcast. So here's what before we get to your story, I want to just read what I really loved. So you said, after the batching boot camp in your post with all of your beautiful food photos, you said that I had no idea how easy it could be to batch.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yes, thank you. That's why we did that boot camp. And really, I see people struggle with their meal plans sometimes. I'm like, wait, batching doesn't have to be that hard. So that's why I did that whole boot camp. So I was really happy for you to express that feedback. And then as I was talking with you in the comments of that post, you said, I said, hey, like, what a gift to your beautiful, healthy self. Thank you. And you said, so far, I've reversed type 2 diabetes, reversed non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, lost 55 pounds, and am in remission. Life is looking pretty bright. So right there, I was like, oh, come, let's just like, let's unpack all this. Let's get to let's talk about this because that's a lot. So
Yeah.
why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your story?
Okay. Well, I live in Canada. I'm in Ottawa, Ontario, and I'm 59 and
You
feeling
look
great.
fabulous, by the
Thank
way.
you. Um, yeah. So I live in Ottawa. I live in Canada, and when I was 56, it was September 2019. I got a phone call, and I was diagnosed with. Well, I wasn't diagnosed yet. I was told I had breast cancer. Um, and then in October, I saw my surgeon oncologist. We booked the lumpectomy and the whole shebang, and then was diagnosed with an ER, which is estrogen positive, breast cancer that was also HER2 positive. So, in layman's terms, they told me that that just meant that it was a defective gene or protein, I think it is. Maybe it's a gene. Anyways, it seeks out cancer cells and tells them to duplicate double time. Fast forward, I went through crazy treatments. I did take a holistic approach. I did have a naturopathic oncologist as well. So I did integrative, meaning I did chemo, I did radiation, and I did all of the alternative stuff as well. In the interim, though, I did suffer a whole lot of side effects, some related to the Herceptin treatment, and I ended up with neuropathy that was really, really bad, especially on the right leg and foot, which meant I was challenging for me to walk. I could only stand for, at the worst or the best of times, I could stand for like 10 minutes. The pain was excruciating. Like it was so bad. And I used to be really active. I used to like go hiking and just do all the things. And all of a sudden, I wasn't even able to do dishes. And then I had other side effects from one of the drugs called tamoxifen. Anyways, I ended up with a type 2 diabetes diagnosis, and then I ended up with a non-alcoholic fatty liver disease diagnosis, and then I found out later that it was showing possible signs of NASH, which apparently is worse. But
What is
yeah,
NASH?
NASH is an extreme version of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So it
Okay.
gets to a much bigger size. So there could be cirrhosis and different things. And I think what was happening was my liver enzymes went like through the roof, specifically what they call the AST and the ALTs. So when I started off, I think They were 95 and 83. So they were very high, very high. And now they're like 22. Like they're not just normal, they're optimal. Like it just, everything changed. Um, and then and my A1C was 10.1. My CRP was 4.3. Yeah, my body was just going crazy, and I was at a point where I thought, okay, Lord, why did I go through all of this to now be almost worse? It felt like it was worse because, and then I started seeing things about whole food plant based. And this is where it gets interesting. Like it just sort of started to come, and then I met with my cousin, told her my story, what was going on. Not my story. She just said, "How are you?"
It's a great question.
Yeah, and you don't see the total weight gain. I went from like, to what I don't know what I was. I was like maybe 120 weight before, and I like my highest was 180 pounds.
Okay, so I was going to ask you. So before we get to the next
Whole
part
food.
of this story.
Yeah.
So when you were diagnosed, tell me about so you were 120 pounds when you were diagnosed.
Yeah.
And then, so what was your overall like lifestyle like at that point?
I was active. Like I would go hiking. I would go to the gym, probably about 4 times a week, 3 to 4 times a week. I didn't go to the gym on the weekends. The weekends were, if depending on the weather, I was either on the beach or with family. Like I was doing different things outside because that's what I loved to do. And I was active in our community. I held women's groups. I was involved in starting up conferences. And all of a sudden, everything kind of went topsy-turvy. But it was just happy-go-lucky. Like it was just a normal, I could sit and cross my legs. And
And
I
you felt
remember
good.
and I felt great. I felt great. I could, I could go upstairs. I could climb stairs, and I could walk. I could focus, and then all of that got kind of robbed.
Right.
It felt like.
So from the time you were diagnosed to then the time you were like not being able to do dishes and 180 pounds, what was the timeline of that? Like how long did that take?
So I started treatments in December of 2019, finished in 2020, and then had another surgery 3 weeks after January 2021. So during the treatments, I would say the neuropathy started, I guess, a few months in. So maybe by February, March, I was already experiencing a little bit of that, of that first year. And then by 2021, I had started to gain some weight as well. And I think that was from a combination of the steroids and just my whole lifestyle and activity level completely changed. Like completely changed. I slept a lot. It was just awful. And then the neuropathy, like I'd wake up with a lot of pain. Like first thing in the morning was the worst because I'd go to stand up and it was excruciating. And then January 7th, 2021, I had another surgery, and then things got worse. And in between, my bones got more fragile too, so I broke my foot twice. I would lose my balance, and so in 2021 was the worst. I was not able to walk. So about a year in total, not even, I guess.
So your life changed pretty drastically, pretty quickly from where you were pre-diagnosis.
Oh yeah.
It really did a big
did a
change.
360.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely. I didn't recognize who I was. Like at all. I remember looking in the mirror and not knowing that person. And it wasn't even so much, it wasn't even like the weight. It was like I didn't know who I was. I couldn't do any of the things that I used to do. All the things that, we take for granted, like batch cooking, would not have happened because I wouldn't be able to stand or focus. Like I would get my daughter to stand with me and I'd say, I just want to make the salad myself. Would you just stay with me to keep me on, like, focused? And what would typically take, it doesn't take a lot to whip up a salad, chop a few vegetables, but it could take me close to an hour from start to finish just to make a simple salad. Yeah, it was drastic.
Yeah. Wow. So what happens next?
I started to pray a lot, and then I remember I did. I'm like, my faith really kept me going, but I started to really, like, at one point go like, is this what my life's going to be now? Now that the treatments are over, like, I can't walk, I'm falling, I can't remember things, like all of that. It was just.
So was all of that side effects of the treatments that you had over that time? Okay.
Yeah, and one of them, tamoxifen, for myself, it was really, really bad.
Yeah.
It affected it. I ended up with anxiety really bad, and then they cut it in half to see if that would help, which it did, but the toxicity levels kept increasing. So this past year, my doctor said, like, the toxicity levels are too high, and so they took me off it completely.
Okay.
Just because my memory was just, I couldn't remember things. I would leave the house and get in my car, and I would get down the block and forget why I was in the car and where I was going. And that, I think,
scary.
That was scary.
Yeah.
I remember just bawling and then turning around and going, like, something has to change. But the physical aspects and everything else, like when I got the diabetes diagnosed, like, it was just shocking because my body was fine before. And I did find out that was one of the side effects that can happen with one of the drugs that I was on. So, so it's just like, okay, so what can I do now?
You reached that point.
Yeah, like I thought, like, there's got to be something I can do, and I remember someone told me about Forks Over Knives, and that was the first documentary I saw, and I was just like, oh, could this be? Could it really work?
Yeah.
And and then I saw my cousin Joanne. She said, "How are you?" I was talking to her. And then out of the blue, she sends me an email and she says, "So I happened to tell Shane about how you were doing. And he said, he's read about people that can reverse it with. Are you interested?" So I said, okay. So he contacts me and he talks about Forks Over Knives and whole food plant-based eating. And I'm like, And then my liver enzymes are all out of whack, and my doctors get concerned. They sent me to the hepatologist. And here's where the rubber hit the road. My hepatologist said, so there's no pill to help with this, but this is science-backed if you're willing to try it. I think you would be able to reverse it. I think because of my personality. And she said, and she brought up whole food plant-based diet, and I swear my jaw dropped because doctors don't mention diet. And I know my family doctor, when I said to her, well, would you be willing to work with me to reverse some of these things because I don't want to be on any more drugs? She's like, skeptical and sure, it's kind of placating. So when the hepatologist came along and actually wrote it as part of my prescription.
Oh, awesome.
She wrote it into the thing. She says, I'm sending this to your doctor. This is what you're going to do. You're going to do ultrasounds every, I think once a year, and then blood labs every 6 months and blah, blah, blah. And you're going to follow a whole food plant-based diet. And then we're going to revisit everything. And so when she got that, she said, okay. And I said, but I need to know, like, I do not want to be on metformin because my A1C was 10.1. So it was really high. And she's like, sure, okay. Yeah. And then I started, and it dropped within less than 3 months. I was getting lightheaded, and it went from, I wrote it down for you. My A1C was 10.3 in 2022. And by July 2022, it was 6.1. And it dropped again. And then it was normal. Today it's 5.0. My fasting glucose is 4.3. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Amazing. So I have so many questions. When your doctor, so you were on metformin, was she kind of observing and regulating your doses while you were going through this?
Yeah, because I said, this is like, I want to know that you're going to work with me to get me off it. So she said, okay, fine, if this is what you're going to do.
Doctor's orders, literally. It was the doctor's orders. That's so awesome.
Yeah. So she did my blood labs. So every 6 months we were doing the blood labs because she wanted to make sure. So when we hit the first milestone of the 6.1, she cut the metformin in half because I was on 1,000 milligrams. So that got cut down in half. And she said, I just want to make sure that this is like not a fluke.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. And did the blood work again, and it came back again, and it was normal. And by this time, she'd gone on mat leave, and it was another doctor, and she said, holy cow, what are you doing? Because she saw the 10.1 and then saw a 6.0. And I said, well, I'm following a whole food plant.
And then less metformin as well.
And less metformin. I said, so just so you know, we're working on getting me off. And she says, okay, we'll do another test. But if it comes back, she says, like, I don't think you have diabetes. Those were her words. I don't think you have diabetes anymore, but we'll do another test. And then, and we did. So she took me off it. And we did another test.
Like, can we just pause right there for a second? And I'll ask you, when she said that to you, like, what kind of a moment was that? Like, I don't think you have diabetes anymore. Because that's, with everybody who has diabetes, those are the words you want to hear, right?
100%. No, like, I was ecstatic. And I'm like, yeah, no, I don't think I do. But if you need to do another test, like, I'm happy to do it. I was in shock, like, in the best way, because when I started afraid, and going like, could this be me? Like, could it really work? Or is this just all sort of made up? But it wasn't. And like, my blood labs, like, I have the trends printed off. Like, it's insane. It's insane because all they keep doing is getting better. Yeah. So I was shocked. And then she asked me, like, what are you doing? And so I told her. And she's like, oh, okay. And so then I did another blood lab and saw her again in 6 months after that. And then she took me off and she said, like, you're not diabetic. And I said, okay. And then I did blood labs again, another 6 months. Saw another doctor who'd replaced her. Dr. Weeks? I don't remember. Anyways, but he was really shocked. And then he says, he says, if I didn't know about the other, he says, like, I'd never think you ever had a diagnosis of diabetes. And I said, so are you putting that in my chart that I'm not diabetic? And he goes, oh, do you want me to?
You're like, hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
I did that.
I worked really hard for that. Yeah, so it is. It's officially in my chart that my diabetes has been resolved.
Yeah.
Through lifestyle changes and whole food plant-based diet.
Yeah. High five. Just, I mean, I wish I could give you a big hug right now and a booty bump because, I mean, there's so much to unpack, but this is, people don't know this. right? And if they
Yeah.
have heard about it, the first instinct I think for a lot of people is the same as yours. Was like, well, is this a thing, or is this just kind of made up? Is this kind of is this really going to help me?
Yeah.
Right?
Could it be me?
Could
Could
it be
this be
me?
my story?
Right.
Yeah.
Could this be my story? Yeah. And for you, yes, it absolutely was your story. So let's talk about now the your liver then, because I know that was another big
Yeah.
issue that you were having, and another big transformation that happened. So talk to us about that.
So they kept monitoring me with that too, they did ultrasound. So the first one, they described the size of my liver as severe. And then that improved to moderate. And the last one was normal. I literally just had the abdominal 2 weeks ago. So it's just normal. And the liver enzymes, they were really concerned about as well, the AST and ALT in particular.
Those are the ones that were like in the 90s.
Yeah, so
Right.
my ALT was 95 and my AST was 83, and it's 22. So it's like optimal, not even just normal, like it's in optimal levels. So, and we did a fibroscan, there's another name for it, elastography of the liver for signs of cirrhosis and damage. And mine came back normal. So there's nothing. But the size of my liver is normal, which is incredible.
That's wild to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it didn't happen overnight. Like none of this happened overnight. I had to keep going and fight self-sabotage and all the different things.
For sure. I want to get to all of that. But before we move on to that, let me just ask, so are you off all medication now, and
am
off
off
all
all
treatment
medication.
now for the breast cancer as well?
Yeah. Yeah. I still see my naturopathic oncologist. So I do mistletoe injections and it causes an autoimmune response to strengthen it. So I give myself injections like 3 times a week, and I'm still doing that for at least another year or two.
Okay.
But otherwise, yeah, I'm completely off my radiation oncologist and my other oncologist. They've both released me.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And my radiation oncologist was another one who was 100% on board with whole food plant-based.
Oh, that's such a blessing to get those people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, so
Okay. Neuropathy.
neuropathy is gone.
Yeah. Focus, energy.
The energy is great. The focus is, especially now that I'm not on tamoxifen, the focus is like the last few months especially, I have really felt like myself again.
I was going to ask. No.
Yeah. Just in, and this summer, I felt like I've actually been able to live this summer, which has been huge, because it's really hard to be in a world that you want to be so much a part of and feel like you're not actually living. And so that's been a real gift to me. Yeah. So I became really passionate. So I enrolled in the Ruby Culinary School for whole food plant-based, and then we'll be doing the eCornell
Nice.
nutrition. Yeah, because it matters. I just want to be able to, like, if somebody asks me a question, yeah, I'll show you how.
Yeah.
Come eat at my table. I'll feed you. So.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. I am just so happy for you. And it's just such a testament to the power of food. And we just don't realize it. And so often it takes something like this to go through this, or to hear about somebody going through this, to open up whatever it is, to be open to that. Right? Because it's not something that we are told. It's not something that we're taught. And so I'm so thrilled for you that you feel like yourself again, and that you are
Yeah.
now feel like you're living your life. I mean,
Yeah.
that is like, it doesn't matter how much money you have in the world. It doesn't matter like what kind of car you drive or what kind of status you have. Like, if you don't feel good and if you feel like shit and you don't feel like yourself, like nothing else really matters, right?
No. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember walking up my first flight of stairs.
Mm.
So, yeah. And I had started a whole food plant-based by then. Like I was just starting, and I had an osteopath that I was working with. Um,
Mm.
but I remember being at IKEA because I could not, and I remember going, I'm just going to try. And I made it up the first six, and I stopped, and my husband was behind me, and I'm like, ah, yes! I'm going up the stairs. And then I wanted to do the rest, so I did the rest. It hurt like a bitch.
Mm.
But I made it to the rest. And then that was in November of 2022. And then in February, I did my first, I went zip lining. And he
Fun.
spotted me, and he does not like heights, but he spotted me. So, because you
This
have
is
to
your
go up the
husband?
steps. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And he would spot me from behind, and I'd go up, and every once in a while I'm like, ah, I'm going up the stairs. And it was like the best feeling. It was the best feeling to just be able to. And I did my first 14K Nordic wilderness hike last year, and
Wow.
that was really amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like these things like that we just really do take for granted, like going upstairs, right? When you
Mhm.
can't do that, it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, it's I think this whole, I mean, the experience that you've been through and so many others that I've talked to people about, it's like it makes it one of the number one thing is it makes people so grateful, and it makes people
Mhm.
not take that easy stuff for granted, right? Because
Yeah.
it really makes a big difference in your everyday life, right? If you can climb stairs or do the things that you want to do, really.
Yeah. You
um
realize that there is nothing mundane about the mundane.
mm,
That is actually where all the treasures are, and all
I
the,
love it.
like, it's all in that. It's in your everyday.
I love that. Yeah, and it's so funny because we can, we have a tendency to get bored or to always seek out, something, the next vacation or the next this or the next that. And I think what a beautiful thing to be able to see the significance and the beauty and the love and everything in just in the mundane things. I think that makes life very rich.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, not that there's anything wrong, like, with all the trips. I love those.
Oh
I
hell yeah,
plan them,
vacation is the best.
right? But it's just, but you can't vacation really if
Oh
you don't have your health. It's just
yeah,
not
yeah,
right. Like, you can't. Like,
yeah.
your health is absolutely everything, because that's where you celebrate the relationships in your life, like your loved ones and your friends, and like all those little things, like this, right? Like,
Yes.
it wouldn't happen otherwise. I've got
Yeah.
too much life to live to stop trying, like, to give up. So,
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, Annie. I love it.
yeah.
So let's talk about then the transition. So you said before your diagnosis, before all of this, you were like, active, you had an active life, you felt really good. So how was this type of eating different from how you were eating before?
Oh, so different.
Tell us.
And it's and I thought I was doing well. Um, okay, so I also, just a little back. So I have a history of an eating disorder that,
Okay.
by at that time, I thought was over. It just kind of morphed. So in my younger years, there was anorexia, that then was bulimia, and I dealt with that for like many years, even after having my kids. And then it just seemed to like be gone for almost 2 decades, or a decade and a half, something like that. Then I wasn't doing so well, and I got caught up in the gluten-free craze,
Mhm.
and um, the paleo. It wasn't the Whole30. I thought like there was Daniel Walker. There were all those things. So SCD, like so all of those. So there was meat and more meat and more meat. There was no carbs, like no bread, like do you know what I mean? Like it was very restrictive. But it got to a point where I ended up, I think, with orthorexia because I became very afraid of other foods and like to the point where it was unhealthy. So at the time when I was diagnosed, that was what I was doing. I was eating grain-free and as clean as you thought you could be. That was me.
Okay.
So I thought I was great.
And is that what you, when you said these disorders sort of morphed eventually into
orthorexia.
that? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So I would love to hear then how eating whole food plant-based, like how did you, like emotionally or psychologically then, how was that for you transitioning to whole food plant-based? Because that's really the exact opposite of paleo, and it's high carb, it's no meat, it's it's the exact opposite. So you had mentioned in the beginning that you went into it a little bit afraid, but that makes sense now. If you were thinking that like, oh, you got to stay away from carbs, and then it's like, oh no, eat like all of the carbs, right? So that might track then why you might have have trepidation to do that. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So something that happened after the diagnosis, and I guess it was after chemo. At that point, I think I was doing radiation. But there was and my body was changing a lot, and there were a lot of side effects. It triggered all of the eating disorder thinking, not the orthorexia part, but the other part about like to cope with all the emotions, I think. So, which I did not anticipate. And in reality, I think that was a real gift having that. I found out that it's a trigger, and it's not uncommon if you've had a history that traumas like that can cause it to flare up, kind of thing. But it turned out to be a gift because I did seek counseling for that. And I actually ended up having to deal with a whole lot of stuff that I didn't realize was still there, like emotional things, right? Like past traumas, all that kind of stuff. And at this point, I still didn't know about whole food plant-based eating. So, but I was afraid of like food and all the things because I was trying to deal with the urges of not binging, not purging, like to numb all the emotions and all the things that were coming up. And when I found out about whole food plant-based, one of the things that I was working on was I had to list out like my foods that I was afraid of. So she had me act like, from the worst food to like the least afraid, and one of them like it was like eating bread, and whether it was whole grain or like eating legumes. I hadn't eaten legumes in like forever, and I loved chickpeas. It had been years. So all of those foods, once I started to like eat those, and then I found out about whole food plant-based, I think it was a few months after that, I'd say 4 or 6 months after that, seeing all of the variety of foods that someone who's following a whole food plant-based lifestyle could eat seemed like a dream for me. It felt like food freedom because all of a sudden things that I loved were back on the table. No pun intended, but they,
literally and figuratively, yes.
Yeah. But it felt like food freedom. And then what was scary for me was that like I was still dealing with feelings of overwhelm and focus, and it was like how do I transition? Because I also have this tendency to want to be a perfectionist. So like there's like it's all or nothing. Like I'm just gonna dig in. And so if like you mess up, for lack of a better term, like that's how my brain was thinking at the time. Like then if I didn't do it perfectly, well, see, I failed.
Yeah.
But I didn't let that stop me this time. I had to really work on that mindset and really change that and focus on like how much I was doing and how much I'd accomplished and look what I was able to eat today and not worry about like, oh, you actually had some cheese today. When I got rid of like the moral of food and it became like food and to nourish my body, it made it easier. It was just like, no, it's just food. It was interesting. A few months ago, I sat down and I goes like, wait, there's 365 days a year. And out of 365 days, each day has at least 3 meals a day if you don't count snacks. You know, if you're fasting or you're doing 2, that's a lot of meals when you multiply that in a year. Like really the odd time that I'm like, oh, so I had a bagel with cheese, like in the grand scheme of things, it was like so small. And that really helped change a focus for me. Just like, oh, it's just food. I've still got another meal. Like, I just won't have cheese the next meal. Because cheese was a big one for me. It was hard.
Okay.
To give up.
I love that mindset shift. And you're right. When you look at it just, when you make food just about food and you take the emotion out of it, and not saying that that's always easy, but when you can do that and just play around with doing that, just like experiment, be like, okay, let me take the emotion out of it for a second. Right. And you look at it as like fuel and you need so many, meals a day in a year. I think that that's a really smart way to think about it because you're right. I mean, and I hear it all the time. It's like what matters most is what you're eating most of the time, right? Not the one occasional cheese pizza that you have, right? Like it's probably going to be like, it is going to be okay. Not even probably, it will be okay. Right. And I think that's a big thing for people, that all or nothing mindset. And I just actually, there was a quote that I wrote down this morning. I was listening to this book and, saying that perfection is the perfection. What was it? It was beautiful. It was like perfection is the evil of good or something. Like perfection will allow you to not experience or appreciate good, right? And good is where we want to be. It's like because perfection isn't even what is that even?
It's not real. Like no, you can't achieve perfection. You can just do your best.
Yeah.
You just do your best every day. There's no such thing as perfection, and yet we think we can achieve it, and then we beat ourselves up over it, or we completely stop. But I did. I had to get rid of that whole moral thing because I had to look at food just for food and not be afraid of it. Because I had to learn what satiation meant. Like what
that's a big one. Okay, talk about that. Yeah.
I had no idea what that was. It had been so skewed for so long that I didn't know what it meant to be satiated. I knew what it felt like when I was like overstuffed. And when it was painful. Like I could tell you that, but I could not tell you when I was hungry and when I was satiated. Because for a lot of times I would push off the hunger or try to so I didn't honor anything. So when I initially started, I looked at it, like my injections, for example, like I take them. I don't skip them because they're going to help me get better, the mistletoe, right? So I had to look at like that first meal of the day for me as like medicine. Like I can't. So I would and eventually I remember the day like when it was like, oh, I think I'm hungry. So that was my first thing. I actually learned what it felt to, and so then I had to, okay, so when I'm hungry, I'm going to feed myself something. It didn't matter if it was like a lunch hour or whatever, whether it was an apple, I just fed myself. So I honored that hunger cue. And then eventually, I had to become like a detective of my own body. I had to be hyper aware of all the sensations. So I would start to experiment. Like, I think I'm full, but I'm not really sure. I think that's satiation. So, but I'd wait a little bit and I'd eat a little more. And then I would feel uncomfortable. And I'm like, oh, had I not had that extra little bit, that would have been the perfect amount. So I started to notice how much I would add extra. So I would start everything small
Mm-hmm.
and then build, if that makes sense. And so then I was like, oh, so this seems to be like the right amount for me. Like my body's happy here. And
Yeah.
it felt really great. But it was also, it was slow.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't count, I was not counting calories, and I was not portion controlling, because I needed to get rid of and wanted to heal that relationship with food. Because food, I, for me, like I believe was created, it was to nourish my body, but also to celebrate life's happy times, right? Like birthdays and
Mm-hmm.
different things. So I didn't want it to rule my life anymore. So it was really important to not do that.
Yeah.
So that's why I think my progress was also slow, including the weight loss. I
Yeah.
didn't give up. Like, you can't, if you want weight loss, don't have any nuts. I'm like, no, because that gets my brain going back into restrictive.
Yeah.
I had it, and then,
Yeah.
and then that was it.
Yeah. Well, I think what you did was you became a detective of your own
Yeah,
body. Like you put on your detective hat and you're like, okay, I'm going to get to know me. I'm going to get to
yeah,
know my body and I'm going to work with my body and give it what it needs. But first, I need to understand, like, I need to be able to listen. I need to be able to really listen and
yeah,
understand. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. And it's so different for each one of us, which is why
exactly.
counting calories and one kind of one size fits all for everybody doesn't work, because we're all
Hmm.
different. and
Hmm.
and you a year ago is different than you right now, and so we all have to
Yeah,
be those detectives for our own body,
yeah,
and really get into tune. And it is really about changing the relationship that you have with food and with your body.
with
So
your
thank you for
body.
explaining that, and like you really explained that well, and just sort of highlighting what you did to do that. And I love that you were like, I just had to pay attention to all of the sensations that my body was feeling,
Yeah,
and
the
that's
good ones
key.
and the bad ones,
Yeah,
including emotions. So, like, if I
yeah,
happen to overeat, like almost like in a purge idea, like it's like I would ask, like, okay, what was the trigger after I'd like
yeah,
it got
yeah,
easier to go straight to like, okay, what was the trigger without beating myself up? Because initially you beat yourself up a little bit. It wasn't like I did even that journey perfectly. The whole thing was this discovery and learning, because I needed to give myself and learn new coping strategies and learn to sit in a lot of the emotions that I would often not allow to come up, right?
yeah. Which is like that's. I mean, that's pretty much,
For most of us.
yeah, for most of us. And that really does lead to all kinds of things. Like that'll manifest in all kinds of ways. I mean,
Yeah.
for me it was alcohol and
Yeah.
cigarettes and fairly unhealthy vegan junk food. But it's like, until we can sit there and really feel physically, emotionally, mentally what's going on with us and be open to that, like that's when that deep healing and that shift really happens. Because otherwise we'll just continue to not pay attention, and we can't be a good detective when we're not paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember being told, I like being asked the question, well, what's the worst that's going to happen if you allow yourself to feel that? And I was like,
uh,
and I didn't want to answer the question. I was sitting there going like,
the world will end. That's the
well,
world
because it
will
felt
end.
like that, right? Like, I don't know. Um, so she said, she challenged me, and she said,
Mm,
like, just like set aside to like purposely grieve. So at the time I was
mm,
like, I think our daughter was getting married and was the empty. So it's just a whole lot of emotions. And for most people, that's probably nothing. But for me, it was just, I guess I had been bottling some stuff down. And so she said, so just go in there and just give yourself permission to grieve.
mm,
Oh, I hadn't thought of that.
yeah.
So, but yeah, so just, yeah. And I would journal like all of the different things like that I would notice, what the triggers were, how did I handle it, what could I do next time, and or like, and even the good things, like, wow, like I did that and that really felt really good. My body really liked that.
Hmm.
So having a book that was dedicated just to learning about my body and rediscovering it and falling in love with it was
Mm.
huge. I think that was the other gift I think that came. Um, like getting a diagnosis was not, but nobody wants that. Nobody wants to go through that. In the process, though, it led me to this, and then going through this whole food plant-based journey and learning how to really care for myself and not just everybody else. Um, yeah, I fell in love with me again
Mm.
and fell in love with my body where it was at, um, not where it could be or where I want it to be, but where it was at the moment, and celebrating that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that was a huge gift that I didn't anticipate. This whole journey has led me to a level of freedom that I don't think I've ever had with food, besides when I was a really young child,
Yeah.
because I don't obsess, like,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, you said it before. You said food freedom, right? And I got
Yeah.
like chills when you said that, because I've heard that a lot. I've experienced that myself, and you would think, right, from somebody from the outside looking in, if you think, okay, well, you are eliminating, a few different major food groups, right? You're eliminating meat, you're eliminating dairy, you're eliminating processed foods. One might look at that and say, well, yeah, that's really restrictive, right? But then once you come to understand, well, yeah, I'm not eating those categories, but like, and you said it before, there's so many things, right, that
Like, there's
falls in
so
line
much.
perfectly with this way of eating, that I think that that's one reason why, even for people who have struggled with eating disorders, find solace in that and find a lot of healing in that, because it's really about eating and being able and not restricting. And
Yeah.
and so I want to also hit on one other thing you said. You said it took some time, right, to lose the
Hmm.
weight and to go through this process. And I think that's such a beautiful thing, because I mean, if it's a quick fix, if it's super super fast, I would say it probably won't last, right? But if you
Yeah.
give yourself the time to actually change that relationship with food and change your relationship with your body and really put on that detective hat and understand, I think that that is setting yourself up, like giving yourself this very solid base that you can then live the rest of your life from. And so I think that that's a really good thing to keep in mind for anyone who's listening, who's like in a rush for this to happen and wanting this to happen right away. So I'm thank you for touching on that as well. Can you speak a little bit more, maybe about that?
Yeah. So I think it was 2022. Like, I was at my highest. It's crazy. I was at 180 pounds. I'm 5'2".
Mm.
Um, I may be a little shorter, apparently, but my driver's license still says 5'2",
We'll
so
go with 5'2" then.
I'll go with 5'2". Um, so, like, that's a lot of excess weight on, and I have like a slight body frame. I don't know if you can tell on the thing, but my bone structure is smaller, like it's. Um, and so it took a long time. Like, remember when I hit 100, I think 150 to 20. Yeah, that was maybe about a year. Like, so it was slow. Like, it would go down and then it would come up a little bit and it would go down. Um, and then even this past like end of February, beginning of March, like, I think that was when I was like 150. My last 30 pounds, 35 pounds only came off in the last little bit. So it's been like a good year and a half almost
Mm-hmm.
to lose that weight. And I know people have lost it much more quickly. But one, I was still on tamoxifen and stuff, so that probably didn't help. But at the same time, I decided to, like, I knew that my body needed to release weight. Like, you'd have to be blind not to. Like, I could feel it. Like, I couldn't cross my legs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you've been always able to realize, I remember sitting down before I knew that was actually what caused me to weigh myself.
Oh.
Because I sat down and I went to cross my legs and I couldn't cross my legs. I'm like, how, I've always crossed my legs. How come I can't cross my legs? And so that was my first goal, was to be able to cross my legs. And it sounds silly, but that's what I wanted to do. But I stopped worrying so much about the actual scale and focused on the other things that needed to happen for it to be an actual lifestyle. So I focused on the foods that needed to come in and learning how to cook them again, and just all of the different things, all of the different lifestyle things. But I focused on nourishing my body with all of those foods first, and then the rest just happened because it was going, like, you cannot not lose weight if you get rid of the junk food.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
Right? And during COVID, there was a lot more takeout because we were trying to support everyone and right? Like, and not always the greatest choices either. So like, it's a lot change. Your body changes when you just start even eating less of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. And I think, like, I would like to say to people who are in that mindset of like, okay, I need to get it off fast. I need to get it off fast. What would change if you gave yourself 2 years? Right? Because I find that if you just give yourself a permission slip to have this be a journey of a couple of years, it's like you have so much more space, right?
Well, you're going to give yourself a gift, because then it's permanent. Like, it's a permanent thing. Because it didn't come on overnight. You know, like, we didn't gain it overnight.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know we've been talking a lot about weight, because that was one significant change that happened. But for you, it was like this whole plethora of things, right? It was like the liver and your breast cancer and diabetes and, a history of disordered eating and the weight as well. So, and then the, emotional part of all of this. And it's been like, I mean, this was not just one thing. And I think for a lot of people, for whatever reason they're going down this path, however they arrived here, I think for a lot of people, it's like one thing, but then it turns out to be a whole lifestyle switch.
Layers.
Yeah, there's layers.
Yeah. There's layers and layers.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
So when you made that transition then, did you really start by like, okay, here's what I'm going to just try to eat more of, and you kind of kept eating how you were eating and just incorporated more whole plant foods, but you were still having like meat and cheese and stuff like that? Or how did you do it? Or did you do it really like, okay, I'm going to do this most of the time? Or what was that transition like?
I tried to do it. It was tricky at the house. So my husband, he is not a whole food plant-based person.
Okay, good to know.
He loves his meat. Okay. He sees the changes though. Mm-hmm. So that's undeniable. So I just figure, you know what? My blood labs aren't lying, and at some point things will shift. Because you can't force it on anybody, right? Yeah. Oh my gosh, I just got sidetracked. Where were we going after
No, so the transition, what that looked like for you.
So I tried to do it, and at the time I was still really struggling with focus, because I was still and my memory was getting worse, and I was feeling overwhelmed because there was a lot of information, and I'm really good at research, almost to a detriment. So I knew I had like the books, and I was reading things, and I was trying to implement, but it was I was finding it challenging. And at the time I couldn't stand for very long, right? Like I couldn't stand for like 10 minutes. And so I was starting to get a little bit discouraged. And Karen Sawyer reached out to me. And so she helped me. She's a whole food plant-based coach, and she was just going to start this Kickstarter to help people transition. And she said, "I'd really like to help you if you'd like that." And so I said yes. I jumped on it. I jumped on it terrified because when I talked to her, I was just like, I think I was probably crying. I am so not the same person.
Yeah.
If you saw me, I was desperate. I was desperate. And so she just kind of held my hand and walked me along and just gave me a few like recipes, like just do these, like don't try to do everything.
Yeah.
Because I came from a background of cooking a lot. Like I'm a real foodie, and when I have people over, like Thanksgiving is like 40 to 50 people. And,
Fun.
and I love to cook for everyone, and I will cook everybody's, like if they've got allergies, I will make sure everybody has what they need because I want them to feel special. But I couldn't do that anymore, obviously. And that was the other hurdle I had to get over was like, I feel like I used to know how to take care of people and cook for people, and now I can barely do anything. So she just walked me through that. And so I just did little by little. I tried to do the all or nothing. I'm just going to jump in because I've got all the recipes. And, and then one day I had a bagel with cheese. and and it was just like, no. And it was just, then I had to realize, like, no, you can do the all, but if something comes in, then there's still other meals. So I had to really change my thinking. So I would say initially I was predominantly whole food, plant-based, but I didn't know how to batch. I didn't know how to prepare for situations that would be, because sometimes you end up like, oh, I'm like running late and now I need something to eat. I don't have anything in my bag, but there's that. So it was shifting all of that. Where before I used to go to a drive-through, I now would go to a grocer and I would buy cantaloupe pre-cut up. And it costs an arm and a leg here, $6 for a little. But that was but I loved it. And it was just like, I could do that, or I could spend the same amount through a drive-through.
Yeah.
But one is better for me. And frankly, I prefer the cantaloupe. Because it's like candy for me. So, but I did. It was predominantly, and it was little by little, and I had some hand holding along the way because I needed that support. And then I found you.
Woohoo!
And like, yeah, and that was a game changer.
Well, I'm so happy you found us, and I want to talk more about that. But I think one thing that I thought of as you were just talking is like, it's so important, and it sounds like you did this beautifully, and you learned to do this throughout your process, but you meet yourself where you're at, right?
Yes.
And so I think that is a really big thing for people to keep in mind. Like, you got to meet yourself where you're at. How it works for one person might not work for you right now, right? Like, and that will change over time, but it sounds like you've done an amazing job of like meeting yourself where you're at and learning why that's really important as well, so that you can do that more going forward. Because it doesn't matter where we're at. Like, I think no matter where you are on your journey, we are always meeting ourselves where we're at, whether we're just beginning or kind of intermediate, or like, I mean, I still meet myself where I'm at every day, and I've been doing this for a long time. So I think you hit on that beautifully. So let's talk about then, you found Clean Food Dirty Girl. So tell us, what do you think?
Okay. Well, I love it. Like, I'm obsessed with it. So when I first found you, I don't even know, like, you just kind of, I don't know if you came up in a feed, and I was like, what is this? Because I was at the time looking for, like, help with, like, some menu plans for plant-based meals and different things, just to keep me going. But yours came up, and yours was, like, so different, because it was actually whole food plant-based, and I just thought, well, I'll try it, because I tried a whole bunch of others. And so when I initially started, I was doing just the recipes. And I still remember the first one I made were these banana walnut muffins.
I know the ones.
They are like the best. They were the best thing. They were the best thing ever. And then I would try some of the recipes, but I couldn't quite figure out like the whole batching thing, and it was a
Hmm.
little intimidating. And then you did the boot camp, and I thought, oh, I can do the boot camp. So,
Hell yeah.
and, yeah, and it was interesting because I actually had time on my schedule, and I'd be able to do it live. And I remember watching you, and you're doing the whole thing, and just all your tips, the size of your kitchen. I'm like, oh, it's a real kitchen. Like, because mine's not the biggest kitchen, but you always think like, oh, you need like, and you don't. Like, you can
No.
do
You
this.
don't even need good lighting apparently, because my lighting was shit that day. I'm like, I don't even care. I just got to show these people how to do it.
Oh my gosh, but they were like the coolest tips, like having your Vitamix like next to the soup pot so that, and I'm just like, why have I never thought to move my Vitamix? Like, just because it just made so much sense. And things like the pre-batching, the seasoning as well, not
Hmm.
just the prepping, the mise en place for the vegetables. Like, that's, I've done that before.
Yeah.
But like, it was all of it. It was mind blowing. I had no idea it could be that simple. And then the food was so good.
The food is the best. It's the best.
It was so freaking good. Like, those sauces, it was the best. And I had like everything for the week. I actually had some for this past week as well because it's just me eating this way.
Yeah.
And so the next day after, put everything in like the big containers, and then afterwards I portioned out some for the following week. So they're all in my freezer, like freezer
Nice.
meals
Yeah. So good.
in individual servings. So like, I am set. Like, but it was delicious. It was so easy splitting up. Like, I did a shopping day, and then I did the mise en place day, and then we did the actual cooking. So
Yeah.
just even breaking it up, if you needed to, in 3 days it's just so doable.
Yeah.
It was so doable, and it was like, to wake up. I was so excited every day for my next meal. Like,
That's the
woo!
best. That's the best, right? When you can really, and I mean, and really, I have to say that really says something, especially since you have coming from a background of disordered eating. I have to say, like, that when you talk about food freedom, when you're excited
Yeah,
to eat your meals and when you're excited to do
yeah,
this, like, that to me, like, that's music to my ears, because I love it when people get excited about food. I love it when people like are excited to eat a whole food plant-based diet, because
yeah.
as you've so beautifully shared with us, this story, I mean, that you had a huge transformation by what you're eating every meal. And
Yeah.
to be able to do that and to be excited about it and to have it be a joyful part of your life, like, I don't think it gets better than that.
No, I get like, my kitchen like is my playground again. And I love that because I get to do it for myself, but I also get excited like cooking for other people. And
Yeah.
so it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I have
It's
to
a
say,
lot of fun.
like, one thing that we really focus on, and I'm just going to like toot our own horn for a second, but we want people to be able to cook this food and feed it to people who maybe wouldn't eat whole food plant-based, and
Yes,
have them go like, "Oh, wow, that's good. I would eat that again." Right? Because
that's
not every whole food
plant-based.
plant-based recipe is like that. And so we really make it a point to
No.
like, let's impress people. And so we're not like that weird person coming to the potluck with the really bland like dry food, right?
No, but it's true. And that's how I've always cooked, like, even before, like, that's what I've always wanted.
Yeah.
And so when I'd have like a niece who had like an egg allergy and da 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 da, and other people like who are celiac, I would want to cook for them, but I want to make things that everybody would want to eat. So now I get to do that with whole food plant based, and it's really fun to just like, and I just serve it. Like, there's no lecture, there's no like, and
Right.
I'll bring things. You know what I'm saying? Like, I
Yeah.
just serve it like I would serve anything else. And then, but to see their eyes light up, and they're like, their taste buds, like,
Hmm.
when you can make somebody's taste buds dance, and then they're going, well, I'd like to do more of this for myself, like at home, is really exciting,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
That
Like,
is. It's a great feeling.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's great feeling.
Yeah. Well, so what's next for you? I mean, I get the sense that you just have so much energy and so much life in you and you're just ready to go. So you mentioned that you were doing you did the cooking classes and then you're doing the Cornell nutrition certificate. So
Yeah.
what does your life look like right now? What are you excited for right now? Tell me a little bit
I'm
about
so
like
excited.
the future Annie.
The future Annie. I know. I feel like the future Annie is constantly evolving. Um, so where I am in particular, there is like no support. Like if you wanted to go to find a workshop to learn, like to see how you actually make stuff, like there's nothing here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've had some people approach me and they go like, well, I'd like to, because I'd have them over and then I would just feed them. And then they'd say, Annie, like, can you help me like with some recipes I'd like to feed like my family that my kids would like too, blah, blah, blah. And so I want to start to have, it's not that I need to make like a big business. I just want like anyone who hears about it or knows me or knows someone who is going through anything and they want some support, like I will be there for them.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be having like in-house workshops
Nice.
where I want it really interactive. I want to have them, so keep it really intimate, and then they get to actually eat the food that they've helped to prepare
Mm-hmm.
and see how easy it is and just how delicious it is too. And yeah, I just want to be able to share with other people that like a diagnosis is just a diagnosis. You don't actually have to receive or accept a diagnosis. So I never like when I it was just like, okay, so that's what it says.
Mm-hmm.
So let me tell you what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I'm planning to do. And then just tell people that I think I want them to know that it's really, it can happen for you. You can change this. We have to get rid of perfectionism or trying to achieve it. And celebrate all of the wins, because like even if you're just changing one meal at a time, like that's plant-based, like that's one meal more than yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And just to celebrate all the wins along the way and not sort of just celebrate all of the wins, because otherwise I think we can really self-sabotage and stop before we actually reach the next peak. So
Yeah, that's
I have a lot of life to live. I plan to do a lot more traveling with my husband.
nice.
Our kids both got married. We had 2 weddings, 78 days apart.
It's
So
a
it
lot.
was busy.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It was the best.
And you could enjoy it. Look at you. You
I
could
could
enjoy
enjoy
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I just want to share with people, I think.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and keep learning and
Well, you've definitely shared a lot with us today, and I know that and anyone and everyone who listens to this will be inspired by you, and I know that I've picked up a bunch of nuggets of wisdom even for myself. So thank you for sharing, and I'm really really happy for you. And sometimes you're right. I mean, sometimes the hardest things in life, the stuff that stings the most and the hardest thing is like a catalyst for beautiful change. Even though at the time you might not see it, you might not understand it, you might not even fathom how it could be. But I know in my own life, that's how it's been as well. And it's funny, but that's how life works a lot of the time. So you're a great example of that as well. So thank you for being so generous with your time and sharing your story.
And the change isn't for us, actually. Like it is, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you share your story to help somebody else. So hopefully this will help somebody else.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Annie. So nice to meet you.
Thanks, Molly. Can't wait for my next boot camp.
Woohoo!